Yeah.
If anybody's got a public comment or a question, would you come over here and sign up for it before we start our meeting? Did anybody hear me? If anybody's got a question for public comment, would they come over here and sign up before we start our meeting? And we'll see if we can't have an answer for you when that time comes. Well, I got 6 o'clock. It's time to start our meeting. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Let's stand, and I'm going to ask Mr. Jakes to lead us in prayer and say, pledge allegiance to the flag.
Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for many blessings of life. Father, we come to you tonight seeking your face, God, seeking your wisdom and your will for this very important and critical decision that has got to be made tonight on behalf of Franklin County. God, I pray that you'd bless our county, our residences, and our businesses. In thy blessed holy name, Father, and I do tonight pray for the church services which are to be held throughout the county. In Christ's name, amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Tonight is just the final agreement on these things which we voted on last November 2009. We voted to do this. But tonight, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to Mr. Murray.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Murray does his presentation, I would like to make a motion that we amend the agenda.
Okay.
And the motion would be as follows. To change item 3 to presentation regarding the revenue bonds. Item 4 will remain public comment. Item 4A, resolution authorizing the revenue bonds.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay. All right, we'll move on then. Mr. Murray, I see you right.
Yeah, I was just ready to come to myself. Good evening. For those of you that don't remember, my name is Roger Murray. I'm with the law firm of Murray Barnes Spencer, and I'm acting as bond counsel on this transaction. As the chairman mentioned, we came before you about a year ago to discuss the county's backing or guaranteeing the bonds at issue. At that time, we advised you, and it still stands true today, that in order to finance the replacement hospital, the county has to back these bonds. When we first met a year ago, we had a very elaborate presentation and showed you, among other things, the economic impact of closing the hospital, how many jobs would be lost, and on the flip side, kind of the multiplier effect of how many jobs would be retained and created, and new jobs and that kind of thing. And When we last met, it was the pleasure of the board to move forward with the project, and at that time to agree to back the bonds. That was in principle. Now, today, we're back before you to ask that you adopt a formal resolution authorizing the execution of the intergovernmental contract that backs the bonds. Before you adopt that resolution, I wanted to make a few points that I hope will help clarify things for the commissioners and also for the people that are in attendance this evening. The first point is in terms of, we've had some questions about the 7 mil pledge. The Hospital Authorities Law allows the county to levy up to 7 mils every year to pay for healthcare related services and facilities. So under the intergovernmental contract, the county is obligated to levy up to 7 mils in the event that the hospital closes and can't pay its own bills. However, using the current digest, assuming a worst case scenario and the hospital never paid 1 dime on these bonds, the county would levy less than 1 mil. So what the county is on the hook for using today's digest is less than 1 mil, and as the digest grows and as that debt's paid off, obviously, you know, that mil goes down. So the worst case exposure for the county is less than 1 mil a year under the current digest. The other point, specific point that I was asked to address is the notice. And there's a couple things contained in the notice of the validation hearing, I think. The first was a reference to the bond audit and the waiver of the bond audit. Let's see here, it's Code Section 3682-100 was a law that was enacted in 2006. And basically what it said is that if you're going to issue GO bonds or revenue bonds, you have to hire an accountant to audit the expenditure of those bond proceeds. And honestly, the bill was a reaction to a situation where a county didn't spend the money like they were supposed to, and there wasn't anybody watching the shop. However, the bill allows issuers to opt out and not pay an auditor for that independent audit if it wants to, and if you opt out, you have to put that in the notice to the public. So since 2006, I've worked on hundreds of bonds issues, and on every one we've opted out. Now that doesn't mean that the public officials are shirking their responsibility and there's no accountability and there's no audit of the funds. It simply means that we're not going to pay an outside accountant to come in and do this on top of the safeguards we've already put in place. And so let me give you an example of the safeguards we have in place in this particular financing. When a contractor wants to get paid, the contractor has to fill out a very detailed sheet, and it's actually a form that's put out by the American Institute of Architects. Is that what it is? AIA? It's one of the AIA forms. I think it's 702 and 703. But there's a very detailed request, and they have to say, you know, here's how every penny was spent, here's the budget, here's where we are to date, here's the lien waivers showing that the subcontractors have, you know, been paid and have signed off. Then, once the contractor prepares that elaborate request for payment, it has to go to the architect. And the architect on the project has to review that and make sure that all those, go out to the site and look to make sure in fact those improvements were made. That's the second step. The third step is then we've hired an independent project supervisor. I don't know if you all remember Larry and Joe, that group. then they have to sign off on it. They do their own independent review and sign off on it to make sure that the money was spent properly. We're still not there yet. Then the requisition and all the paperwork goes to the trustee, who's an independent bank, who's holding the bond money to make sure that the bond money is only paid when legitimate project costs have been submitted. So then the bond trustee pays out those monies. That's the process we have in place. So it's not that we don't have safeguards to make sure that the money's being spent properly. It's that we don't see any sense paying an accountant another $20,000 or whatever they would charge to do what we're already doing and really doing it better, because the accountant isn't an architect or a contractor or a trustee that's paid to do this every day. And nothing's being hidden. If you all want, I can make arrangements for you to get a copy of every single requisition and every single paper that's submitted. And if you want it, I can build it in the documents that it's supplied to you, and then it'll become a matter of public record. And if somebody wants to come in, they can come and look at the requisition to their heart's content. The other question that I had regarding the notice was covered a little bit earlier, was just like the conditions under which a tax would or could be levied. And basically it's only in the event that the hospital operations fail and the operating company, which is going to be Ty-Cobb Healthcare System, can no longer make the payments in lieu of taxes. So the new hospital has to close. That's the condition. There's no other conditions under which the county would be responsible for making payment of principal or interest on the bonds. Those are kind of the points that I wanted to make, and I think the points that I was specifically asked to address, but I'd be happy to talk about any other aspect of the project if you'd like.
Any commissioners got any questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If the hospital were to become insolvent, and looking through the MOU, I see two safeguards, and I would like further clarification on those. One is an insurance policy that is in place, that is paid for basically by the bond holder, which if the hospital were to become insolvent, would make the parties whole. Secondly, beside that, in the MOU, it clearly defines that Franklin County would be a lien holder on the actual building complex.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot to mention that point. That's right. We also built in the documents that in the event that the county has to levy a tax and make any payments on the bonds, the operator has to reimburse you, and to secure that reimbursement obligation, you have a second lien on the facility. So you would be able to foreclose on it, just like you would do the normal tax lien if somebody doesn't pay a tax lien. So we have a mortgage running in favor of the county, so the county would be able to foreclose on the project and hopefully be made whole. Thank you for pointing that out. I forgot to mention that.
Okay.
The bond insurance policy really honestly doesn't provide the county any protection. Some insurance, you think of the insurance policy of stepping in front of the county, but really the bond insurance policy comes after the county. The bond insurer would look for you all to pay. First level of payment is from the operator from Ty-Cobb. Second, they would look to the county, and third, the insurance policy would pay. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that somehow the insurance policy is being purchased to sort of remove the county's liability, because that's not the case. However, the presence of the insurance policy lowers the interest rate on the bonds, because in effect, the insurance policy guarantees the payment of the bonds too, and therefore the county has a smaller liability because you have a lower interest rate. So it benefits the county indirectly, but the insurer is not in front of the county.
The indebtedness, it is not amortized being a bond. It is consistent throughout the duration of the bond. Is that correct?
You mean the payments?
That's
Principal
correct.
interest payment? Yes, level, the principal interest payments are gonna be level. One of the things we've looked at is the terms of the pilot bonds. Should we have them long or should we have them short? And where we came out on that is we thought it would be in the county's best interest to have the pilot bonds to be long, outstanding for a long period of time, because if it's a short period of time, if you had to make a payment, you get hit and it would be a mil as opposed to a half a mil. So by stretching the debt service payments out, it makes the county's liability in any particular year smaller, and it also provides cash flow relief for the operator so that the county's going to be less likely to pay. So, we thought about which way to structure that in terms of the best interest of the county, and that's where we came out. So we're pushing the underwriters to make the maturities on these pilot bonds as long as possible, and we're right now looking at 35 years. So we're doing everything we can to mitigate the county's exposure on the deal, and if the county has to pay, to keep the payment as small as possible, and to give the county security or collateral in the event it has to pay.
Is the security or collateral, as outlined in the MOU, in excess of the $50 million for the whole facility and complex?
Do you mean the collateral that the county has?
That is correct.
That's right. That's right. The county has a mortgage on the entire facility, which is, you're right, there'll be $50-some million of equity in that. So your point being, there's a $56 million asset being pledged against $8 million of debt. This is a very exciting project to work on, because it's the first one. I've been doing this 20 years, and the first one that I've ever seen like a joint venture with the doctors and getting the doctors involved, and it's really going to be good, because we're going to be able to get, and that's another thing that I want the community to understand, is we're going to be able to not only keep a healthcare facility in the county, we're going to have a brand new healthcare facility, and we're going to have services and facilities here that aren't currently being provided. A lot of people are going over to Gainesville or Athens. Well, now they can stay home and have their heart surgery or whatever it is they want. So the county is going to be getting better health care and more services as a result of this project too. And having a good hospital is a big factor in driving the economy. When businesses locate somewhere, what are the first two questions? What's your health care and what are your schools like, right? They want to know that you got a good hospital, and they want to know you have good schools. And the bottom line is, I know that your development director works hard at attracting and retaining good businesses, and this will help.
Any more questions?
I would ask council if he has had an opportunity to read the MOU as well as the certificate purchase agreement, and has any comments at this time.
I have. I understand that the MOU is still being tinkered with. I don't know if we have it in final form for approval tonight.
Well, they're substantially final, and they're approving them, and they're like 99.9% done. There's a couple of things that have to be tinkered with, but it authorizes the chairman to sign and to approve any final changes. But the main deal points have all been hammered out.
Anything else from the board?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
And y'all, if as this process continues, if you have any questions, please feel free to call me directly. I'll be happy to talk to you on the phone or come up and sit down with you. That's what I'm here for. So then we're going to do public comment, and then you're going to take the motions. Yes, I do.
And you might have to answer some of their questions.
All right, sure, I'd be happy.
Who's got the list?
We have a microphone for him. Oh, whoever's at this podium.
He's good. Thank you. All right, first person, Clint Harper. Clint.
Thank you. My name's Clint Harper. I hope I can ask a couple of questions. And the first question I want to ask, has everyone read the contract? Has everybody up here read the contract? Is that Charles?
Yes, I've been
Read the contract. I just didn't want this to be like healthcare. We vote on it and then read the contract. My second question, who has the tax liability? Who actually owns the property where the hospital sits?
I'd say the industrial authority owns it right now.
Yeah, that's right. The industrial authority owns the property, and it will be leased to NGTC, which is the doctors,
Right.
and then they're gonna sublease it to TICOP, which is the operating entity.
Right.
And the reason that the title of the facility was put in the name of the authority was so that, that they could have an ad valorem property tax break, property tax exemption.
Okay.
And the current hospitals are not on the tax roll right now because they're nonprofit, so it's not taking property off the digest that's currently there, it's just keeping it in the same.
Well, my question is, since the industrial authority owns the property, how can TICOP Healthcare be liable for those taxes? Because they don't own the property, and the industrial authority does not pay property
Right,
taxes.
that's why the bonds, you may have heard us use the term pilot bonds. What the acronym stands for is payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
Because you're right, the company has no tax liability. So they agree, they say, we don't have a tax liability, but we are gonna agree to take the amount of money that we would have paid in taxes and pay it over to the
But if
debt
they don't
service.
own the property, they would not have paid anything in taxes because it's the industrial authority
Right.
in which they do not pay taxes.
Right, that's why they have to agree by contract to make those tax payments. That's why we have it's called a pilot agreement. And the company is saying, we know we don't have to pay taxes, but we're gonna pay them anyways.
Okay, I'm still not clear on that, but I guess that's as far as we can go with that. I don't see how.
Clint, can I interrupt?
Yes. Well, I mean, Chairman's got the floor.
There's a point of clarification.
Okay, go ahead.
You use the term pilot, but that's for $8.5 million from the, is that you talking about pilot through the hospital authority of Livonia, or you talking about a pilot through the county?
No, I'm talking about through the hospital authority.
Well, what you're saying though, is you're talking about the industrial building authority, which is separate.
No, what I'm
Yes.
saying,
I understand what you're saying.
what I'm saying is, how can the hospital be liable for taxes if they don't own the property?
They're not liable for taxes. But they were just agreeing contractually to make a payment. And the reason we have to, they're just agreeing to pay a certain amount of money. You're right, they're not, you can agree by contract to do anything. And so you're just, by contract, they're agreeing to pay a set amount of money.
They're agreeing to pay taxes that they don't owe?
Right, and the reason we have to call them taxes as opposed to just other payments is you need to do that for the bonds to be tax exempt.
Okay.
It has to be treated as a tax, an ad valorem property tax, in order for the bonds to be tax exempt. And the advantage of having the bonds tax exempt is you save about 2% in
And it's legal to do that?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
that's, yeah.
Okay. You know, I guess we can do anything, but also, is the payment that the hospital gonna pay, is it gonna be a fixed payment or actual tax rate payment?
We struggled with that one. It is gonna be a fixed payment.
Okay, good, because we're hoping to lower taxes in this county. And if taxes are lowered, it may not cover the bond. My next question. You're talking about insurance, and I'm glad you did bring that up, that insurance really is not going to protect the county. Now, my question is, and it's been said, you know, well, the county has first lien.
Second.
Second lien, okay. All right, I've been told it had first lien. What happens if the hospital declares Chapter 11 bankruptcy, the county gets nothing, they don't miss a day's work, but yet we get pennies on the dollar on that bond?
I'm not following your question.
Okay, it's not likely that the hospital's gonna wake up and say, we're not making money, we're broke, let's all go home. Okay, they're going to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That's the first step. Okay, that means that Franklin County cannot touch the property, the insurance company cannot touch the property, but yet they're in reconstruction. What do we do with those payments? What does the county do? You see, I think the county has got more liable than we're making known here.
The industrial authority,
The industrial authority is going to pay it?
So you're saying, I think I understand correctly, you're saying, would a bankruptcy, sort of could it discharge the company's obligations to
That's what bankruptcy does.
Absolutely.
Yeah, now I'm not a bankruptcy expert, but I believe that bankruptcy does not wipe out property taxes or federal taxes.
But they don't owe taxes because they don't own the land.
Well, the company agreed to pay.
But they can't pay it.
property tax.
The county has no recourse. Under
That's
Chapter 11.
That's a very good question.
Under Chapter 11, the county has no recourse but pay those
That's a
taxes.
very good question.
Pay the bond off.
The
And you see, that's the more likelihood if the hospital does not do well. They're not gonna pack up and go home and give it to the county.
Yeah.
They're gonna Chapter 11, that means that they're gonna go into reconstruction. That means we may get pennies on the dollar.
Well, I had to think as you were talking because there's an answer. It really is a great question. To be honest with you, I hadn't really focused on that. But the answer is under the financing documents, filing a bankruptcy, a petition to file a bankruptcy buyer on behalf of the company is an event of default, and the whole deal is collapsed, and they lose the project. So the scenario that you pose is not possible under the documents, but yep. Yeah, my noodles there.
I think you're wrong on that.
No.
I think in a couple of years, they will be able to declare bankruptcy,
Well, they absolutely can declare bankruptcy.
and that will protect the
But no,
property.
it doesn't, because a bankruptcy is an event of default under the financing documents. When it's an event of default, it triggers the foreclosure on the whole deal collapses. So they don't have that option. The bond, like for example, the bond insurer would never issue a policy allowing them to file bankruptcy and not step in and have remedies. So again, it's an interesting question, but it's not possible under the documents as drafted.
Well, I believe it is possible, but are you familiar with two bond models?
Two bond models?
Two bond models,
Lease back money.
Say that again.
in which one of them that the county is not liable for. It goes strictly to the prospect, I won't get into that, but, I guess the last question or statement, I think the hospital is a good thing. I've always been on board with it. But I want to address the commissioners. Are you willing to put this county up liable for $8.5 million? Because I don't think y'all really understood up till recently that the county would be liable, as I talked to some of you, and I don't think y'all understood that the county would be held liable in this pilot bond. How much are we gonna give? I mean, it comes to a point, like I said, I think it would be a great thing to have. But the issue is, we're going to issue a pilot bond that in 2006, they made a law that you need to have a performance audit, and we're gonna opt out of that. And the way that the paper reads, that we are supposed to trust the authority hereby notifies all interested parties that no independent performance audit or performance review will be conducted with respects to the Series 2010 certificate issue. However, the authority will ensure the Series 2010 certificate proceeds are expended efficiently and economically. So the authority is going to ensure that they're going to spend the money wisely. That's the way I read it.
I think that's what Roger said.
Yeah,
If you wanted to see a copy of what they spent, you can get it from you.
Yeah, those are the safeguards.
So
that we
no,
put in
I
place.
mean, they're just saying, trust us to spend the money. I mean, that's the way I read it in the paper.
I
So,
think we had enough of those kind of comments, Clint, you can throw some mud all day long, and we might not ever get through with any mud. Well, I think you sort of throw it down.
I think you did good.
I think that's what but I've got to get to church. I appreciate y'all's patience.
Thank you.
And I just think about this before you vote. Think about it.
It's a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, I am sorry for interrupting, but as Clint had brought up in our conversation Friday, we had a very lengthy conversation, and even in my notes here, you just mentioned that Franklin County would become a second lien holder. You had clarified to me that we would be, and the terminology that you used was first in line. And now I'm very concerned that we have gone from first to second, and just would ask for clarification.
I don't think those facts have changed. The RZ, the structure of the RZ bonds, were always secured by a deed to secure debt, a mortgage on that. And, you know, when this issue first arose, I thought it was clear a year ago, and I thought it was clear throughout the last year. And if I misspoke earlier, I'm sorry, but,
Okay, just for the purpose of my clarification.
yeah, it's a second lien. I mean, it's,
Who
and
has
it's
the first lien?
the RZ bond, the other series, $39 million of those bonds, you know, that are being issued by the Development Authority.
Okay.
They have a first lien. And, you know, all the documents that have been distributed all say subordinate at the top. It says, in the name of the document, everywhere it says subordinate. So
Okay.
it's not like there's been no change in policy, or there might have been miscommunication, but consistently from day one till now, it's always been subordinate.
Okay.
Mortgage.
Any more questions?
I want to thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Next one's Lisa Phillips.
I just have a question. Is this going to be a county-owned hospital, or is it still going to be a nonprofit?
Maybe county owned.
Well, from the way it looks, we're going from $3 million of SPLOST money to $8 million on bond referendum. We're still going to own the land. We're going to own the hospital. I believe we will be in this for the long run, because this will not be the last time they need money from us. You've got two hospitals that are not meeting their budget now, and you can't put two together to make one good one. This is a bad business decision, and I do not feel like y'all have really thought about this. I know y'all think you're seeing dollar signs, but you're not. Please think about this. Think it hard before you make your decision tonight.
Thank you. Mike, Rick, you know about it. The next one, Jerry Maddox.
I've got real problems with the structure of this thing and the convolutedness of the two bond issues. That's not what I want to address tonight. What I want to address is the process that you all have gone through to get here. And I will say that it's pretty evident that this goes back quite a ways. Likely as much as 2 years this has been in the works. It's been under the radar for most of that time for most of the citizens of this county. And I wonder why it was done that way, and why the hospital authority wasn't created at the inception of this concept. Because if they had been, they would have had to have held public meetings, just like you. They would have been subject to the Sunshine Law. So I'm concerned that there's been a lot of decisions made, there have been a lot of commitments made, but yet there doesn't seem to have been any one organization that sat on top of this thing and ran it through where the public would have had real good knowledge of beforehand. And it brings me to tonight's meeting. I wonder why, if the authority was created on the week before the vote in November, and all the paperwork was already ready, everything had already been committed to, everything was already set up to go, it got published in the paper around the 4th, and then we're supposed to believe that this is just now being decided. I think there's been a lot going on in the background, and so the question becomes, why did tonight's meeting have to be specially called? You all have known about this for a long time. It's not like this has been completely out of your eyesight until just a couple weeks ago. And so the public didn't get a chance to have a hearing on this. We didn't get to hear a lot about this. We're scrambling at the last moment because you didn't publish it in the paper that this meeting was going to hold. And I know you called this at a last minute and you met the minimum of the law in holding this meeting. But it sure doesn't encourage the folks that are out here watching what you do to have a lot of confidence that this has been done above board. So I simply say to you tonight that I would pledge that I will try my very best to get a probe, an investigation done into the process that preceded all of this that happened up till tonight, and hope that if there's any criminal wrongdoing, it'll be shown. Thank you.
Can I answer one question? One of the comments / questions was, why was the Hospital Authority of Livonia created so quickly? I can tell you what ruined my damn weekend, whoever was talking, because we've been talking to and meeting with the Hospital Authority of Royston for 3 years about this project. And all the documents were drafted using that authority. We met with that authority, we met with the Development Authority. For years we've been talking about this. And then we were told last minute that one of the Hospital Authority members, you know, was going to raise a fuss about something, and so we had to have Livonia create a new hospital authority, but there was no thought ever about using the hospital, creating a hospital authority of Livonia until literally 2 days before it was created, and that was necessitated by some local politics that I'm not privy to. You'd have to talk to the chairman of the hospital authority to figure that out. So anyway, so there wasn't anything to that other than last minute politics, I guess.
Next person, Glenn Davis.
I just signed, I thought that was a check-in thing.
Okay.
I don't have any comment.
All right, I hope this is Josh Lunsford down here.
Yeah.
I can't hardly tell.
Yeah, I got bad writing. I was Franklin County educated. I believe, I want to first say I appreciate the commissioners that I emailed questions to last night, responding back to the ones that did. I think that's the way things should go. Mr. Maddox asked some of the questions that I was going to ask, but the one thing that as I sat here I thought about, and I didn't catch the gentleman's name, it's still quite hard to hear him because he doesn't have a microphone, but I believe you said that it was $20,000 is the number you throwed out for an accountant. Seemed pretty cheap on an $8.5 million deal to have we paid $20,000 for somebody to do some oversight on. I would suggest that if you decide that you do want to move forward with this, that it might be a good idea to look into having someone, you know, an independent person do some oversight on it. I know we got checks and balances, but when you're talking about this kind of money, $20,000, $50,000, we spend that on boat ramps, you know, and they're $8.5 million. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Richard, Tammy Roberts, okay. You have any questions? Kay Williams.
Yes, I do hope that you thought this over, and I don't really see how Levy could make a vote when you talked to this guy. You thought you understood, Jeff, what was going on. You don't have a clue no more than Portillo Angela sitting there, and I doubt Charles has a clue. This is very important. It's like the 8.5 million is a drop in the bucket to you. You're not
To
thinking
the
this
contrary,
through.
Ms. Williams.
Pardon?
To the contrary.
Well, I think first lien holder, second lien holder ought to put some kind of a ding-a-ling bell going off in the head.
Understand?
Think about this, Jeff.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Jordan, you got.
Oh, and I'm glad I was able to come tonight. Appreciate the notice from some folks. One, I'd like to address the bond council up here. I have a tape of the minutes from the meeting at the beginning of the year when the city attorney of Royston, who's also the hospital authority attorney who you're working with, who's also represents the industrial building authority. We had a discussion at that council meeting about appointing a member to the hospital authority of Royston. I was told at that meeting that we didn't have a hospital anymore in Royston, it was moving, and that we didn't need to appoint anybody, there was no more hospital authority. Several weeks ago, I got a phone call from a board member who was appointed the year before to the hospital authority of Royston. They said they had not seen any minutes, heard anything about it. There are no minutes. That board has never met. And what you said, your information is exactly wrong, sir. That board did not meet. I said, if that's the case, if they've not been meeting, we're not going to violate the law. We're not going to do anything under the table. We cannot have this authority do anything like a pilot bond. I have lots of questions. It's not fair to the taxpayers of this county and the taxpayers that live in the city of Royston. So your information is exactly wrong. That is not the case. Your statements tonight are totally wrong.
The only response I can make is that if Mike Green communicated to you or somebody else that we weren't going to use the hospital authority, that was because originally both deals were supposed to go through the building authority, and I changed the structure unbeknownst to Mike.
That was in January of this year, not 3 years ago, sir. But I was told that. That's why I'm glad I came tonight. And I'll tell you, you mentioned something about the chairman of some organization not agreeing or could vote for the memorandum of understanding, the MOU. As far as my knowledge is, the chairman that's over there, Mayor Owens, has not been given the authority to make that for the Industrial Building Authority. And in fact, that agreement that they're looking at has never been fully reviewed or voted on by the Industrial Building Authority. So I think that needs to be clarified.
I think that's up to the Industrial Building Authority.
I'm sure it is, but it hasn't been voted on, and we haven't even seen the final copy ourselves.
That was the last one on the list, so
May I make one statement?
one statement.
I've asked this question several times in other meetings. You've got two hospitals that have failed, same company, same owner. They're larger. You've got the same company coming to this area with a smaller hospital. How do you expect that same company to prevail in this one? The only way you can do it is by making the taxpayers responsible to support it. And that's the way I see it. I hope it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Pressure time comes down.
Yeah, right, I have a question, could I ask a question? I got in late, too late to sign sheet.
Okay, I'll let him have it, and this is gonna be the last one since everybody signed up.
I'd like to ask, if
State
the county,
State your name.
excuse me?
Your name. State your name. What?
Oh, I'm Hal Pierce.
Yeah, so you write it down.
As I see it, the county has a greater stake in this business that we're doing. So why aren't they first lien holders? And I don't want the thing to fail if it gets going, but I've got that question. And who let that happen? If we've got the most money involved in it and most money at risk, why aren't we the first lien holder?
I think we got the least money, they putting up $50 million in this thing. 39 million.
39. Well, that answers my question. But there is one other, he mentioned, that these payments that they're gonna make in lieu of taxes, who's gonna decide how much they are, and will the county assessors have anything to do with that?
Well, that gets back to the questions asked earlier. It's gonna be a fixed payment, and it's gonna be based on the debt service of the bonds, which is gonna be less than the sort of the normal taxes. So it's gonna be a fixed payment, and we'll know that in about 2 weeks when the bonds are sold. We'll know exactly what the payments are.
How much less than the normal assessment? We'd like for people to pay their way. We've got companies in this county now who have abatements, and it puts a load on the taxpayers, the common people. If they don't pay their way, we have to pay their way.
Well, when we were structuring the deal, again, we went back and forth and said, well, should we have ICOB make the payment equal to the normal taxes, or should we have the smaller payment, which is the debt service? And what we decided was, if we had to make the bigger payment, then it would put the operator in more jeopardy and would be more likely for the county to have to step in. So we were trying to structure it so that the county would have the least amount of risk as possible. And so that's why we didn't force the operator to make that bigger payment on the pilot bond and have a smaller payment on the pilot bonds. Now, also bear in mind that the existing facilities, they're not on the tax digest. And so we're not taking anything off the tax digest. And so we're hoping that there's going to be 2 new medical office buildings and ancillary facilities associated with the project that will be new on the tax digest that we didn't have before. So we're hoping that this is going to add to the tax digest, not take anything off.
And a while ago, you made a statement that in worst case scenario, that would be less than $1 million that the county would have to pay. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll defer to the county manager. A mill produces about $660,000, I think. The mill is about $660,000, and we're hoping the debt service on the bond is going to be closer to, like 570-ish or something like that. Well, we can't know until the bonds are sold. You can't know until the interest rate. It's just like when you don't know your interest rates until you actually sell the debt. So we won't. I mean, we know we can look at a scale, say, okay, if it's AA and the investors bought the bonds today, here's what the interest rate would be, and work backwards. But we won't know to the penny until we sell them. We can't possibly know. So yeah, so it's less than $1 million on using today's digest, because that's $660,000, and the debt service is going to be less than that.
I'd like to say also, I hope this thing flies and I hope it succeeds. I hope we don't have to get down to these other things we're talking about.
I just have something very brief. I'm sorry I didn't get the sign-up thing, if I may.
All right, this is going to be the last.
It'll be very short. It's just I came here tonight to educate myself. I just heard about, the meeting and everything about an hour before, so. But something that came up that just I need to make perfect sense about is how can we vote on an MOU that's not finished? I mean, it's just a common sense question for me as the taxpayer. And I'm not trying to cause any problems. I really want the hospital to be successful. But I've never heard of anybody voting on something to be guaranteed when they don't understand what the contract is that we're guaranteeing. I mean, I'm not a part of any group or anything like that. I'm just a simple person that thinks that that's a common sense thing. I've never walked in and signed a contract with something that I don't know what I'm getting.
Well,
That's all. I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask about that.
The contracted issue is
done. Hold on 1 second, sir. I was just going to say that little points that to be hammered out can be major. They can really be major. And if there's a couple of little hammering points, then why don't we finish that before we vote? That's all I have to say.
Postpone the vote.
And thank you very much for listening. Sorry.
Another week till y'all iron it all out.
The contract, I just want to make the point, the contract, the intergovernmental contract is the one that puts the county backing on it. and it is 100% complete. The MOU deals with a couple tangential items, like where the road's gonna be located and things of that nature, and they're still working on legal descriptions. But the contract that backs the county is done 100%.
Well, really, the MOU wouldn't have to be done tonight either, would it?
Well, even if it's not the MOU, I mean, it's the entire deal.
Well, the
Let's put
contract
it that way. If the
is
entire deal
finished.
has been hammered out, then how do we know what we're doing? Because if we just found out tonight that second lien and first lien for some people, then we don't really know the entire deal. That's my only issue. Why can't we vote when we have a complete package? And thank you very much for hearing.
Thank you for saying what everybody wants to say.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, now either you want a hospital or you don't.
I want to defer to council to question the legality and legitimacy of the process to this point, and I want clarification regarding the county and the risk and liability with us being a second lien holder, because I'm gonna be straightforward. This is the first that I have heard tonight where we have been placed as a second lien holder to the $39 million bond. I know the complex value, it far exceeds the $8.5 million plus the $39 million. I'm deferring to you for the legality of everything that has happened up to this point and asking for your guidance and asking, are we safe and secure if we enter into this agreement?
First, can we get that lady's name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, my name is Dawn Norris. I'm a citizen of Volusia. Thank you.
First, with regard to the process that brought us to this point, I can confirm that every process that this board has engaged in, for which I serve as counsel, and which I've been involved in, has been proper and appropriate. I was not involved in the inception and negotiation of the business deal that occurred between and among the hospital authorities and the industrial building authority, who has their own lawyer. I wasn't involved in those, so I cannot attest to the to those. But they each have their lawyers, and Mr. Murray represents those entities too. So his certifications, I think, are important. And it's important to note that in these bond deals, all of the lawyers who are involved are going to sign certifications essentially stating what you're asking me to state. So you're going to have multiple lawyers on the hook saying everything was done proper, and the bonds wouldn't sell if you didn't have those certifications. Because the people who are buying the bonds are going to probably be as diligent or more diligent than the members of this Board of Commissioners before they invest their money.
Is the county protected in case of insolvency with us being a second lien holder?
Well, the first thing I would say is the payment in lieu of tax statute is a widely used, regularly used and tried and true method for financing projects like this one. It happens a lot all over the state. In that regard, the statutory construct is designed to protect everybody involved in the deal. Now, I cannot guarantee that the $570,000 payment, plus or minus, that is designed to pay the debt service is going to be paid every year for the 35-year term of these bonds. I don't think anybody can make that guarantee to us. To protect us, one of the protections that we have is this subordinate deed to secured debt. And it's a second lien, and it carries with it the risks that all second liens are going to carry, which is that the value of the security will get eaten up by the first lien. I can't guarantee what the value of the hospital property will be if and when the people that are supposed to pay us their payments in lieu of taxes ultimately default. So no, I can't guarantee that if and when it comes time for us to foreclose on our second lien, that foreclosure will yield us whatever it is that we're entitled to. That being said, the economic benefits of the deal are still the same economic benefits of the deal that you found attractive in the first instance, the first time that you considered this a year ago. The deal, while the specifics of it have certainly morphed over the year, is still essentially the business deal that was presented to you, and I think the presentation that the hospital folks made a year ago probably still stands in all respects. That is not the total comfort that you're asking for from me, but I can't provide that.
Thank you, Council.
Yes.
Any other questions from board members? If not, it's time to say you want a hospital or you don't. So do I hear a motion that we proceed with this?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we proceed with this resolution bond agreement.
No, second, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion second. All in favor? Okay, thank you. All of this, any other questions, anything? If not, there's nothing else on the agenda, so I could go hear a motion to adjourn.
How's that moving, Mr. Chairman?
So moved. All in favor, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate all the county since I've known them.
Did you get an email from Amazon?
Nice things about me.
Get it off. Yeah. A lot more than I thought I would. Yeah, there you go. Charlie.